Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legends and More, the podcast. I'm your host, Luke Legend. Today, I have a world traveler, an amazing icon and legend himself. It is Zach Churney. Zach, how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, Zach, you have been all around the world, and you currently live where?
So I currently live with my partner in Germany. We live in Cochem. It's kind of in
Fulham?
Cochem. It's near Luxembourg, like north of the border with France. So not too far from Cologne, about a couple hours away. It's
Am
beautiful.
I saying that right? Fulham? Like I'm
Yeah,
coughing?
Cochem, exactly.
Fulham. I just got some Fulham in the back of my throat.
Every
And
time
you're
we share
originally
it, it's like that. People are like, "How do you say this? Is it Cochem? What is this?"
Fulham.
Yeah.
Love it. And you're originally from where?
So I was born in Indianapolis. I was raised mostly in the Hoosier State, but my family also lived in North Carolina. But most of my life I spent in Indiana.
Nice. And how did you end up in Fulham, Germany?
So this is where the story is going. Like I need to go into some details.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, here we go. So back in 2021, the world was just beginning to like open up after the pandemic, and we were living in Indianapolis downtown. And honestly, we were kind of in the process of asking ourselves, we're both millennials. Do we want to buy a house? What do we want to do? And I think that it was a moment where, because Austin and I had both traveled a lot, we had this dream in the back of our heads, let's try to move to Europe because we both, studied abroad there and traveled there. And I think for so long we told ourselves that's just impossible. It's not going to happen. But I think in the way that COVID changed the world, remote work became a thing for a lot of people when it wasn't before. And so we had a tiny little window of opportunity open up and decided to take it. And so we actually, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but we decided to live in a different country every 3 months for a year. We asked our bosses, hey, can we work remotely for a year? Can we travel? The answer was yes. So we left Indianapolis. We went to Ireland for 3 months, and then Italy, and then Croatia, and then we ended up here in Germany. And we've been here for 2.5 years. So it's been like a wild journey, but I think it all started in Indianapolis. A lot of conversations.
Why did you settle on Germany?
That's a really great question. So I studied in Germany. Austin studied in France and Ireland, but for me, Germany was always a big goal because there were job opportunities, but also the quality of life. I think for both of us, we asked ourselves, what is it that we want and where we live? And Germany just kind of checked a lot of boxes. It's central in Europe, it's easy to travel, and there were a lot more job opportunities here than in other countries. So that was the big factor, I would say, for both of us.
Are both of your jobs based in Europe?
Yes. Yeah. So when we left the US, and it was really up in the air, we didn't know if we were going to return. We had no idea if our bosses back in the US would say, hey, you have to come back. But what happened is we both ended up finding jobs here. And in Germany and in a lot of countries, if you get a job in the country, you're able to get a visa, and then basically you begin the process of becoming a resident. And that's what we're doing right now.
That's amazing. So I have to ask, everyone talks about it on social media, and there's all the people that say, yes, it's like that. No, it's not. What we see on social media, is there all the amazing things that people talk about, like healthcare and quality of food and all those things? Do those really exist?
Oh my God, you just asked a really big question. I wasn't expecting. I thought you were going to say something like about, is it really as beautiful like in Ireland or Italy as the pictures? And instead you're like, healthcare and food and all this other. Yeah, no, the truth of the matter is that yes, I can break it down a little bit, like in practical terms.
Yes.
So one, like let's start with healthcare because I think that's a huge thing that people ask about all the time. Healthcare here is, I mean, coming from the US, I would say I'm still overcoming healthcare related traumas because
Yeah.
I feel like especially anyone who's in their 30s, by that point, you've been through some sort of a major health crisis, right? I mean, and if
I'm
you
only
haven't, like,
laughing because it's so true.
it is true. It's absolutely true. And I think that for me, when we were in the US, I had health insurance, but obviously, you've got your deductibles and you've got all of these out of pocket expenses, and everything's so confusing. Like, my least favorite day at a new job was like, sit down with the HR people and let's talk about what healthcare package you're going to do. And when I came here, that was like, it was like night and day. I got a new job and I walked in to the office, and they said, "Okay, so who's your healthcare provider?" And I said, "Or your insurance provider." And I was like, "What? I'm not sure what you mean." In Germany, they have universal healthcare, meaning everyone gets coverage, and so you go through like a public-private company. There are a lot of different options to choose from. Some have like English-speaking support, and you just select one, and then everything gets automatically taken out of your paycheck, like based on your income. So you pay your health insurance costs every month, comes out of
So there's
your.
multiple companies?
There are, yeah, so you can go with like public health insurance and private health insurance. I'm not going to go into details about them, but basically everyone gets coverage. And so for me, like, I pay based on my income. And then when I go to the doctor, insurance covers everything. Like, there are no deductibles, there are no out-of-pocket expenses except for very, very specific things. So now if I'm sick and I go to the doctor, I never have to do anything. I just pull out my health card, put the little chip in the reader, and then I don't have to pay anything at all. And it's amazing. So that's like one thing.
Are there wait times? Like, is there long waits for stuff?
No, that was another thing. Like, I heard that and I read that online. People were like, "Oh, yeah, but universal healthcare in Canada, their wait times." I think maybe if you're going for a major surgery, like if you're getting, like, I don't know, a liver transplant, it might be different.
Okay.
But in the US, it's the same thing. There's also a waiting list, and you have to wait sometimes. So from my experience in the past 2.5 years, since I've had health insurance here, I've never had those problems. I've always gotten in on time, never had a problem seeing a doctor ever. So, and then one other thing that's really cool is that health insurance covers so much more here than it does in the US. For example, if you are sick and you go to a doctor here in Germany, and your doctor says, "Hey, Luke, you have the flu, you need to stay home from work for a week," your health insurance will pay for your salary for that week, and you lose no paid time off, you lose no vacation days, nothing. They pay for everything. Yeah, so that's one thing. The food, you asked about the food, and I'm laughing because I recently talked about this with a friend. In the EU, laws are so much more strict. For example, like candy and all these other things, like, we laugh because a lot of Europeans will say, "Oh, these are like American snacks," and we're like, that doesn't taste like what it actually tastes like in America. Like, there's no high fructose corn syrup. I mean, things like that are not legal here. So yeah, I think overall when we moved here, it was little things like that, like going to the grocery store and seeing that the food quality is better, the meat quality is better. Yeah, those sorts of things that you wouldn't think about, but when you move abroad, you're like, okay, it's really noticeable. I think both of us noticed that in our bodies, and just ever since we moved here. But yeah, overall, everything that you read online about like the quality of life and things being better, in our experience, it's been the case.
So with like the taxes and stuff, do they take out like a significant portion? Like, how much is it?
You are asking all of the great questions today. This is an awesome question, because I think that was another thing we were worried about moving to a country that is more, democratic socialist. And we were like, okay, how is this going to be? But the wild thing is, I had a comparable salary in Indiana, and I would say that my taxes are just a little bit higher, but I get so much more here than I did for my taxes in Indiana and in the US. For example, if I want to go get my master's degree, it's free. Public university here is tuition free. Like I said, healthcare costs. And we have a much better public transportation infrastructure. So in Germany, if you're a resident here, you pay basically $50 a month for unlimited bus train, tram, subway use across the entire country. So it's things like that that you go, yeah, I pay a little bit more in taxes, but I get a lot more.
It's worth it.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's crazy. So you and your partner are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. Tell me about the safety over there. How safe do you feel over there?
That, you know what, I'm going to answer that based on countries, if that's okay, because I think that
Sure.
it's really important to note that being a member of the LGBTQ plus community is very different depending on where you go. Even in Europe, it's different country to country. So in Ireland, it was
Okay.
amazing, which was surprising. You know, you think Ireland, you know, lots of Catholics, how's this going to be? But we felt
Yeah.
so safe, and it's actually protected. I believe it's in the Constitution. It's also the same way in Germany, where marriage equality is like it's law.
Well, the Catholics invented homosexuality, so
Bunch of camp queens. No, it's true.
I mean, I was raised Catholic, so I
It's
know all about
camp.
that.
I wasn't raised
It
Catholic,
is.
but when I saw one, when I saw like a mass, I was like, what is
We
this?
got the gold, we got the music, we got
The
the guy in the
swinging
dress.
thing?
He's swinging his purse, his magic purse, and it smells great. You know, we invented homosexuality.
Frankincense and myrrh, yeah.
Where are some places that you do not feel are as safe or as comfortable in Europe?
Another really good question. So in Italy, I would say it's tricky. And I think that this wave of like far right nationalism, I think it's something that's not special to the US right now. It's happening everywhere, and it's especially happening in places like Italy and Hungary. And so when we were in Italy, we lived in Sicily. And Sicily is really like a different country compared to Italy. It's in the far south, and it's been conquered many times. But when we were there, it was a place where I felt like, okay, I have to be careful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to show, you know, public displays of affection with Austin when we're walking down the street. And you could feel it, you know, going from Ireland to Italy. I would say Italy is a lot more conservative, but then again, northern Italy is different than southern Italy. Southern Italy is more conservative. So that's one place. And then when we were in Croatia, we got to know this guy who lives there, and he's gay as well. And he told us, you know, it's still tricky, you know, being in the Balkan countries because, you know, being gay is not always accepted. So, but overall, I would say in Europe, I tend to feel a lot more safe than I did in the US, to be honest, especially in certain places in the US. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you're working towards your citizenship.
Yeah.
Tell me about violence in Germany. How does that compare to America?
Yeah, this is another really interesting topic because I studied abroad in Germany in 2012, and at that time I would say that there wasn't a lot of violence. Now there is more violence in Germany, and I'm not sure, you know, what's happening with that, but there's no mass shootings. There's no gun violence. You know, when you hear about things happening here, it might be like a knife attack or something like that.
Okay.
But gun violence is just such a different world. You know, in my first job here in Germany, I remember kind of explaining to my colleagues that there were mass shootings in schools, and it's something that, and other places, not just schools. And it was really interesting to hear from them because even in Germany, they don't read everything about what's happening in America. You know, when something really big happens, they'll tune in if it's like international news. But really, they had no idea that these things were happening, you know, in pockets all over the country. For example, when we lived in Indianapolis, there was the FedEx shooting, and we knew somebody who was killed there. And I was explaining that to the Germans. You know, we wanted to leave America partially because we just didn't feel as safe. And they did not understand it. And when I kind of shared all of this with them, they were shocked. They were just completely shocked. They're like, how is it that in a country like the United States, you know, country of freedom, country of democracy, that gun violence is something that's so normal for you guys? And so that was something, I think, a minor culture shock coming here, was just understanding that the rest of the world, it's not normal for them, you know?
But, we are seeing this rise in conservatism. And a part of me wonders if that's just the ebb and flow of society, that the past decade, past 2 decades, that we've been pushing more as what they would call wokeness, right? Or as we call it, empathy for
Mhm.
people of all kinds.
Yeah.
And when you have to open your mind to change, that's terrifying. And when
Mhm.
people get scared, that's when they get violent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that partly what lends itself to this global trend that we're seeing of conservatism, because people do not like change, for better or worse. They don't.
Mhm.
And I think that's partly why Donald Trump got reelected, right?
Mhm.
Is people don't like change. It's the demon we know.
Yeah.
So I think some people are like, listen, just like Bush's second term, I know he's going to screw it up,
Yeah.
but I have no idea what Kamala is going to be able to accomplish.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true.
You know?
You're right. Yeah. And I think that what you said about there being an ebb and flow, I think that's truth. We've seen that in not just in US politics, it's happening everywhere. Even in Britain, you've got, the reign of the conservatives, then the liberals come back, and then the conservatives. But I think what I would say, just from my observations of living abroad, living in different countries, and seeing the commonalities of places where I would say is more dangerous. So I'm putting myself now, like, I remember when I went back to the US and I was on the east side of Indy, and I was in a particular neighborhood where there was a lot more violence. And then I think about living in Palermo in Sicily in Italy, and there was a lot more violence there compared to somewhere like Cork, Ireland. And so I kind of stepped back for a second and asked myself, okay, what are the common things that I'm seeing? Why would a society be more violent? And I really believe that it comes down to how cared for people are. For example, like living here in Germany, I think that there's less violence because people here don't have the need to be violent, and also mental health, underlying mental health issues. A lot of times that comes from things like poverty, or losing your house because of medical debt, or having a lot of student loans and feeling like you can't own a home, or that you can't, make it in life. And so I think that at the end of the day, when you have a society of people who feel taken care of, they don't feel like they're fighting, paycheck to paycheck, and they know that their health care issues are not going to cause them bankruptcy. I think it makes people less violent. I mean, maybe that's a little bit naive, but it's the truth. You're not in survival
No, I
mode.
mean, safety, that it all comes down to your hierarchy of needs, right? And if those are
Exactly.
disrupted, that's where fear and violence comes from.
Exactly.
Look at us, two white men with all the answers.
That's
I'm just kidding. Look at us figuring out all the answers. No, I'm just kidding. I have a very American question to ask. So
Yay.
I'm sorry to ask this. What do they predominantly speak in Germany? Do they speak English or German?
They speak German. Yeah. They speak German.
So
Yeah.
so my question is if I, as a person who speaks no German, comes over and spends, like, let's say a month with you, how much am I going to be able to get by not speaking German?
Ooh, you said that's a really American question, but that's a really good question. I would say it depends country to country. In Germany, I would say it's about a 50-50. And this is what I'll say. Most people here can understand English a little bit, at least. If you need something, they're going to help you. But I feel like I can answer this pretty well because I speak German. And before we went to Germany, I already spoke the language, but Austin didn't speak it at all. And so I've seen both sides. And the difference is, and I think that this is probably the case for wherever you go, if you're, in Mexico with Spanish, if you're in France with French, is that if you speak the language, it's the fastest way that you're going to integrate, and it's the fastest way that you're going to connect with other humans. And the treatment is better. That's one thing, like, I'll say is in Germany, I've seen it. I've seen Americans go to a restaurant, and I've seen them only speak English, and the way that the staff treats them, I'm like, okay. But then I speak them in German and they're like, oh, no. You know what I mean? Gerne.
I mean,
yeah.
I can't fault that at all, because when people from other countries come to America and they don't speak English, a lot of Americans treat them like crap. So I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I don't feel bad for Americans that get poo-pooed on. You know, so how is Austin then been adapting to being in a place where he doesn't, or he having to learn the language?
Yeah, he was lucky enough to find a job where it's international enough that English is their working language. So I think that for him, that was, I mean, I don't think he could have walked into a job where they only spoke German, you know? But in his everyday life, in the beginning, we lived in a city called Mannheim. When we lived there, it was like just getting through some of the basic tasks, like, you know, registering your address is something you have to do in Germany, and going to these government offices to fill out paperwork. Those little interactions, because he didn't speak German, they were difficult. And the other thing is, there are a lot of foreigners in Germany who come from Turkey, who come from, you know, Greece or Spain. And so for them, they don't speak English. Their native language is Turkish or, you know, Italian or whatever. And so for them, they use German, and you have to use German with them. Otherwise, you're not going to communicate. And so he had a hard time in the beginning, but we ended up moving to Cochem. And here he's connected with people, and now he's conversational in German. It's pretty amazing, actually. He learned quickly. Yeah, it's
Nice.
pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I'm always worried that I'm gonna have to learn a language really quickly, and I'm gonna be really bad at it. And I tried to download the Duolingo app and learn some Spanish last year, and I was really struggling.
It's hard, like learning a language on an app. And as somebody who's learned another language, I'll be honest, like people say, what's the best thing I can do? Immersion, always, 100%. Because think about it, when you were a child and you were learning words, you know, you'd ask your mom, what's that, you know? And I think it's the same way when you're learning a foreign language. But if you're on an app, our brains we're not programmed to learn that way.
Yeah. I know you say it wasn't a very American question, but I got attacked on Twitter last week. I got a lot of heat because Emma Bunton, my accent, Emma Bunton from the Spice Girls, Baby Spice, she posted a video about daylight savings time. And so she was saying, remember, people of the UK, tonight is the night when two become one. But she didn't say people of the UK. She just said tonight is the night when two become one. And it was the week before America's daylight savings time happened.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of Americans were in the comments like freaking out, being like, what do you, it's next weekend. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And of course, all the European people were getting on them like, there's other places in the world. And so I chimed in and I was like, honestly, I didn't know that Europe had daylight savings time because it's such a stupid concept that I just assumed it was American. So when I said that, I said, I even know that Europe had daylight savings time. I got so attacked.
Oh no!
From Europe, they were like, "Yeah, well, the world doesn't revolve around America, and you should learn to read a book, and blah blah blah, and you should learn about this person." And I was like, I didn't mean that. I was trying to poop on America and be like, listen, I thought this concept was something stupid and American.
Yeah. No, I get you. You know what? Can I be honest?
So I've been very careful about my questions about.
Yeah. No, you're okay. And I'm the same way. I didn't know that there was daylight savings time here either until we moved here. And I was like, oh, you guys do that too? Okay. Okay.
It's so dumb. Literally, here in Indiana last night, the sun was dipping below the skyline at 4:30 p.m.
Yeah.
4:30 p.m.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. Yeah.
It was like 6 p.m. pitch blackout. And everyone was like, why does it feel like 11 p.m.?
Yeah.
Like, because it's so dark.
Yeah, daylight savings.
Crazy.
Yeah. I wanted to say, I think that you actually brought up something that's really important to talk about, though, because one, I don't think that you should be attacked online, you know, just because you didn't know that. But I think a couple weeks ago, I actually did an interview with a reporter from USA Today, and she asked me, you know, things that I wish that I would have known, you know, at the beginning of our journey of living abroad. And something that I said to her was, you know, the longer I lived outside of the United States, I understand that you kind of live in this giant dome of, I don't know, like I would say like mirrors, basically. Like, Americans are very much like, everything's about us. The world
Yep.
perspective is like from our perspective. The way that, China operates or whatever is always in comparison to the United States. And I think that
Yeah.
a lot of Americans, when they go abroad, it is an uncomfortable process of basically saying, okay, wait, I learned that that's the way the world is, but maybe that's not the way the world is. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think a lot of Americans are in the same boat as you, and they just don't know. You know what I mean? I was
What was
the
the
same.
biggest culture shock for you?
Well,
Like, what
okay.
was vastly different from what we do in America that shocked you?
I think that the way that, well, one, what you said about, like, when you go to another country, you don't know a lot of what they do. You don't know their cultures, their traditions, or whatever. I think in general, the big culture shock is always relearning things. Like, for example, in Germany, work culture, like just little things. Like, for example, here's a great example. I had a huge culture shock when I was at work. We were in a very professional environment. There was a client sitting in the room with us, and one of my colleagues was bringing up an idea, and then another colleague basically said in the middle of the meeting, like, that's stupid. That's a dumb idea. Stop. And for me, I'm like, oh God, coming from Indiana, like being a Midwestern boy, you're like, okay, that would not fly. Somebody's going to get a
No.
talking to. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But it's not like that. Here, they're like, yeah, but Germans are very logical, and they're like, but it was a stupid idea, so I'm going to say it. And I'm like, so I struggled in the beginning, especially as a Midwesterners. We like to sandwich our critiques. We're like, you did a good job in the presentation. You could have improved here, but thanks again for doing it. And in Germany, it's like, yeah, you said this and this, it was stupid and it was wrong. And you're just like, oh.
I actually kind of like that.
It leaves
yeah.
you're not so anxious because you know how people feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's part of my critique with American corporation kind of culture is definitely all of the, forgive the lack of a better term, the bullshit. And as I get older, now I'm a person in my 30s and a millennial, it gets really exhausting to tiptoe around logical comments simply because logic sometimes offends or upsets somebody. I'm at this age where I don't have time for bullshit, and to me it's unnecessary. So I like a more direct kind of approach. Like, I'll never forget when I saw that video from like 10 years ago of Lady Gaga, and she was at one of Oprah's speech things, and she was talking about how we communicate with each other. And she said, we've gotten to this place in culture where we're just unconsciously communicating lies. Because instead of texting that person and saying, this is how I feel, we're going, oh God, what should I say? Do you think this is more strategically better to say? Do you think this is more strategically better to say? And then you're not saying what you actually feel. And so
Exactly.
all gets lost in translation. And so
Exactly.
I personally would feel much better in a kind of workplace where somebody is like, listen, I understand you just said that, but that's not a great idea. So let's move on to something different.
Yeah, it's true. It's uncomfortable in the beginning, but then after a while, you're like, okay, I like this. It's direct.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning. Like, the thing is that I still experience culture shock. I think there are a lot of little things here and there. Like, when you live in another country and you have to, like, basically relearn your own culture, it's uncomfortable. But yeah, those little things are sometimes better. I think that's the other thing that coming out of this, and it's something I like to write about my experiences. It's something that I enjoy writing about, is basically when I go through moments like that where I'm sitting in a conference room and somebody's like, hey, this is a horrible idea. I like to talk about it and then understand, why did I flinch? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
Like, when something happens and you're like, oh,
it's kind of a wince, like, ugh.
Exactly. And maybe Hoosiers are more likely to do that because I'm now understanding that as Americans, we have different cultures.
Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because in Germany, whenever I ask people, hey, have you been to America? They're always like, yeah, I was in New York. Is New York close to Indiana? And I'm like, no.
That's what I talk to people who are from out of America and they're like, "Where are you located?" And I'll say, "I'm in Indiana." But before they ask, I go, "I'm about 3 hours south of Chicago."
Chicago,
That's
absolutely.
what I always use as like the
100%.
closest major land.
100%. But I will say, because it's a little shout out to Indianapolis, I've been hearing more and more people here in Europe who know where Indianapolis is and what it is. And it's really interesting
Oh,
because
that's really cool.
yeah, the Indy 500, surprisingly, has been kind of like,
Well,
oh, racing. Exactly. They're like
Yeah.
racing Indianapolis. And I'm like, okay, yeah, true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I have a really, really stupid question.
Okay.
How are the bathrooms over there?
Ooh, okay. This is like, I love these questions, Luke, because this is like the real shit that people want to know about, right? And
Yes. Yeah, well, because here's the thing. I am very pee shy. I hate American restrooms. There's no privacy. It's just we're all just in the open air, just all peeing in a trough in front of each other. And so I hear sometimes about when people go over to Europe, they're like, the bathrooms are amazing, they're so private and clean, and I'm like, is that true?
yeah, it's true.
Oh my
Like
God. I'm on my way.
the one biggest difference, and it's my favorite thing about German bathrooms, is a toilet always has its own private room. Like they build a room around the toilet, has a door. Yeah, I know.
Sounds like heaven.
It's amazing.
Heaven.
When I went back to Indy, this was like, when was this? Like 2022. I went back to Indianapolis and I went into a stall and I was like, how is this not illegal? The gaps in the door, the like children
so
running
wide.
under. Yeah. And you're just like,
Yes.
Anybody can see, anybody can look.
I love when I read those comments from people from Europe when they visit America. They're like, why is there like an inch gap in the door? And people who just see in to taking a dump. It's so uncomfortable and weird.
Mhm.
And it literally, I don't go number 2 in public. I just go number 1. But sometimes, but I'm also pee shy, so I have to go in a stall every
Yeah.
time. And I went to this restaurant the other day, and this stall itself was faced towards the door, and outside of the door was the entire restaurant.
Oh,
So
God.
if somebody, all I could think about is if I was going number 2 and I was sitting here and somebody opened the door, everyone in the restaurant can see right in to me taking a dump.
I do not miss that shit.
That is mind blowing.
I don't miss that at all. I don't miss that.
It's weird. And then all these conservatives want to be like, well, so-and-so shouldn't be going to the bathroom. You shouldn't be knowing who's in the bathroom in general. I'm sorry. You should not. Everyone should have their own bathroom, their own toilet, and it should be none of your business what's going on in there.
Exactly. Okay? Yeah, no. And I'm like, the thing is, once you go to private stalls, private little rooms, you can't go back. Maybe don't come to Europe, because then you'll go back to us and you'll be like, this is horrific.
Well, maybe I mean, after this election, maybe I might have to move to Europe. You never know.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's true.
So take me through your journey of travel. So you guys started in Ireland. Tell me about Ireland and what were the amazing things that you loved there?
Yeah, so we chose Ireland because we thought, being gone for a year, it's going to be the easiest to start off with, a country where English is the language, and we both really wanted to go there. So we decided on Cork because it was cheaper than Dublin. Dublin's a pretty expensive city, but Cork is in Southwest Ireland, and I'm so happy that we chose it. We basically were like, where can we get good internet, and where, it seems like it's a cool place to live. We saw a lot of things online, and we were like, okay, let's do it. And so we found something online where we could find housing for 3 months. This gentleman named Declan, oh my God, he was amazing. We kind of connected with him, and then we left Indy. We got to Cork. It was July, and I remember when we left Indy, like it was already like 83 degrees, humid, hot, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. in the morning. And so we're like, okay, we're going to Ireland. And when we landed in Ireland, it was like 60 degrees, overcast.
Lovely.
We were like, yeah, but it was cool because we were like, oh shit, like this is it. It was pretty cool because we're in a different part of the world. It really wakes your body up when you get off the plane, and you're in shorts still, and it's cold. But when we got to Ireland, I think the most shocking thing was the first guy we talked with. We could not understand him. We were like, is he speaking English? but he was speaking in such a strong accent that we couldn't understand him. And we were like, oh my God, how's this going to be? But we like connected with Declan. We stayed in this old like 1800s house at the top of the hill that overlooked Cork. And it used to be like a British officer house. And we stayed there. It was kind of old and run down, but we were like, this is amazing. It was like an eat, pray, love moment. And in Ireland, I would say we spent a lot of time traveling, being outside. We went and saw the cliffs and the sea. We got to swim in the ocean in August when it was warm, stung by a jellyfish. It was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because it was just a little baby one. It was like this big and it stung my toe.
Okay.
And no, Ireland was amazing because I always talk about this. The people, they're just amazing. They're so kind. They're very outgoing. Basically everything that we think about when it comes to Irish people, but they just want to talk to you and they just want to get to know you and they want to know your story. And it really is also like the greenest place I've ever been in my life. I mean, I thought that was a joke, the Emerald Isle and all of that, but it's like when we were there, I was like, everything is green, like freaky green kind of, and it was beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, but it was great. We made a lot of friends there. That was our first 3 months. It was the summer. We got to travel a lot, and I think my favorite experience in Ireland, though, if I had to say the thing that kind of made me think I don't know if I want to go back to America, was I went to Dublin with a friend that we made. He was taking a test, and I went to St. Stephen's Green, which is a big park, kind of like a mini Central Park in the middle of Dublin. And it was early in the morning, and people are walking, and I was having that moment, and I've had these all the time where you get goosebumps, and you're like, I'm in Europe. This is pretty cool. I'm like, this is awesome. And I sat on a bench, and this like little pigeon was in front of me, just like dancing and like trying to get my attention, and then hopped on my knee and was just like trying to like kiss me. It was just the weirdest experience with this little pigeon. And I ended up talking to this gentleman.
The pigeon was hitting on you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I still have videos. I should actually send them to you later. Yeah, I have a video of this pigeon. And people walked by and were laughing, and they were asking me about it in their little Irish accents.
There's somebody for everyone.
But it was weird because it had this weird motion issue, and this guy came up to me, and he was old, and he was like, there you are. And he put his finger out, and this bird just jumped on his finger. And I'm sitting there like, what is going on? This is like Snow White or something. And he ended up telling me that this pigeon had a physical like defect, and he would come and feed it because the other birds would take its food. And so this little bird and he were like friends. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm in Dublin. I'm sitting around here, and this man is like sitting here talking to me about how he comes and takes care of this bird every day who just like danced on my knee. It was just one of those cool moments where you're like, damn, this is my life. This is cool.
That's amazing. And that's I'm going to say another American thing. There are certain things you don't think about. Like, I didn't know that Ireland had jellyfish. I know that's stupid, but like in my American mind, I'm like, oh yeah, we have those in the Gulf of Mexico. You don't think about them being up in Ireland. Like, I'm trying to imagine an Irish jellyfish.
I have pictures of them too. No,
I love that you talked about that guy that you couldn't understand, because there's, I do comedy, and everyone tells me to listen to this comedian, and he's Irish, and I've tried to listen to him, and he's speaking English. I can hear certain words. I know he's speaking English. I cannot understand a single freaking word he's saying, and everyone in the audience is laughing, and I'm like, what does he say? I can't understand it all.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's absolutely true. It's the same thing in London as well.
So tell me about. So you went from Ireland to where was the place you went to next?
Italy. So I had been to Italy, and Austin had never been to Italy. And I think that one of our favorite movies is Under the Tuscan Sun, and he was like, I want to go to Italy. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
I love you guys. That is so gay.
But we used to, when we lived in Indy, we would watch movies like Eat, Pray, Love and like Under the Tuscan Sun. We'd be drinking wine and like having our, pretty expensive baguette, because we're like, okay, let's go to, I think it was called like Amelia's in Fountain Square. There was like a place where we used to get baguettes from. But anyway, And
I love you, faggots.
but we decided on Italy, and specifically, we wanted to go to Sicily because we knew that it was different and it was very rustic. And so the capital there is Palermo. And we had been 3 months in Ireland, beautiful, everybody speaks English, of course. Then we go to Palermo, and that was culture shock. We come out of the train station. It is just everything you think of, like Vespas flying by, buses. You're like trying to run through the road. There's like non-existent crosswalks. You're just like pulling luggage. We had our little Dachshund Schnitzel. Poor little guy was like running through the streets of Palermo.
You brought a dog with you?
Yeah, we brought our dog with us. He's with us. Yeah. I should have.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that level of it. So like this whole time, on top of world traveling, you're bringing a dog with you?
Yeah, Schnitzel. He is.
Is that difficult?
Because he's so little, it's not that difficult because he can fly with us in airplanes. We just have to make a reservation for him. He can fit under the seat. So it's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah. It hasn't been bad.
Is he allowed to sit in your lap?
No, on a plane? No. So just a little tip for any dog owners who might want to travel with their dog. If the dog is, I think it's maybe 15 or under 20 pounds, I think. And they're small enough to fit in a like a little holder under the seat, you can take your dog with you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, we got to Sicily, and it's just so different. It is such an ancient city. Palermo is like known as the most conquered city in the world because, the Normans were there. Then you got the Greeks and the Romans, and everyone was there, conquering it. And so it's this hodgepodge city. And on top of that, you still see the effects of the mafia, because that was where the mafia, had their roots, was in Palermo and in Sicily. And so when we got there, it was just overwhelming at first, because Italian culture and Sicilian culture is so different than Irish culture or US American culture. And so, we were there for 3 months, but it was hard. I got mugged while we were there. That's a crazy story. I got mugged. Yeah, I got my phone stolen. I was walking home, and it was a group of people. They
like jumped you?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was pretty wild. But when we were in Italy, I think that both of us kind of had this, I don't know how to explain it. It's like we felt really adventurous, and nobody spoke English, like nobody. And so we were like surviving, trying to order things in Italian and just trying to get by.
Sounds scary.
It was scary. I'd never really been in that situation, to be honest with you, because, in Germany, I speak German, Austin speaks French. And so, when we traveled, a lot of the times we could understand the language a little bit, but in Sicily, nobody spoke English. And, it was a really wild experience. But for me, I took a lot of time to hike, to walk, to see the city. I swam in the Mediterranean for the first time when we were there. We went to now one of our favorite beach towns, which is called Cefalù. Beautiful little beach town on the north coast of Sicily. And I think that we really fell in love with it. We fell in love with Sicily, even though it was a place where I got mugged and a lot happened and it was kind of scary. We really fell in love with the adventure and the excitement of it all. And there's a lot of beauty in it. The people there, they're survivors. They're tough,
Yeah. Absolutely. What's been your favorite place to visit?
I love Malta. I spent my 30th birthday in Malta, and we went swimming in some sea caves there. I loved Malta. The people there are so kind. It's just a little island country. My favorite city in Europe is still Vienna in Austria. I love Vienna. It's the easiest place to get around. There's subways and streetcars, but I love the arts. Like I love the opera and the museums, and it's the city of Mozart, so I think that that's probably my favorite city. But honestly, the cool thing about Europe is there's just so much in such a small area. In America, it's like you're on a plane for 2 hours, you go from Indiana to Florida, and honestly, things don't change that much. There's still strip malls and highways and everything like that. But I think in Europe, it's like you go on a plane 2 hours and, you're in Italy or Greece or wherever. And so I think that's something that's really cool about living here.
Has there been places that you were like, this isn't for me?
Wow, in Europe, I would say, to be honest with you, no. I have been places that I thought, this isn't my favorite place to be. I think Palermo will always hold a special place in my heart, but it's not necessarily a place that I'm like, ooh, I always want to go back there. But to be honest with you, it's like there are quite a few places in America that I've been where I'm like, oh, I don't want to ever come back here. I mean,
name them.
Oh, I knew you were going to do this to me. I mean, I can think of a place in Indiana that's not too far from Chicago that I've been to that I was like, I don't know if I want to come back here, but we'll just leave it at that. No tea, no shade. Yeah, you know what? I think that one thing I have to say about Indianapolis is like, that's always going to be like my hometown. Do you know what I mean? Like I do miss it. And we have friends here who we say all the time, like European friends, if we could take you somewhere, we would take you to Indy, because I think that it's a place where, we can give you I think Midwestern culture is different than other parts of the country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it really is.
Sure.
Like when you go to Boston or you go to New York, it just isn't the same. And obviously they're big cities, but even in the Midwest, I feel like even when I go to Columbus, it's not the same as Indy. Indy has this weird, the south of the north vibe in a way. It's kind of like a thing that I've noticed when you have a city that focuses on making sure that people live in that like downtown area, it gives it a different energy. And I think Indianapolis, the one thing, and now we're talking about Indy. I love this. I love that, we have circled all the way back, but I think that that's one thing that I really wish that the city would focus on is bringing, obviously we need events and we need all of those things, but we need people to live down there. You know what I mean? We need people to live in the city. And that's kind of one of the things that is missing. I agree with you.
What would be your biggest advice to somebody that's never traveled to Europe?
I would say that planning is your friend.
Oh, yeah.
Planning is your friend, but at the same time, over planning is not your friend. I think sometimes when Americans come to Europe, and we've had a couple groups actually come here, and we've put together an itinerary, and we've learned the do's and the don'ts. And the one big do is before you leave, whatever country you're going to, if you're going to France, if you're going to Italy, whatever, make sure you know a little bit of the language. That's number one.
Okay.
Sure. Know a little bit of the language. Even if it's just like ciao, grazie, buona giornata, whatever it is. And the other thing I would say is start to familiarize yourself with etiquette. For example, I think that a lot of Americans, when they come to Europe, they don't understand that when you're in public, like being quieter, like that's important. It's going to change your whole experience. It's just maybe look up some of the things, the nuances, watch a video, watch Rick Steves, do a little bit of research before you come, because that's so important. Just understanding little things. Like don't order a cappuccino in the afternoon in Italy. Don't do it. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Your face. You're like, okay. But it's true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true. And
why is that frowned upon?
It's a cultural thing. I don't know.
Huh.
I really don't understand it.
Is it like their version of like putting pineapple on pizza? They're like, no, don't do that. Oh, and definitely don't bring that up in Italy. I know that. I know that much.
I actually, the first time I ever traveled to Europe was in 2011, and I went to Vienna, and there was a museum doing a whole exhibit on the human body. And there were like a lot of like photographs, and it was also paintings and things like that, but it was all focused on the human body. And so they had this huge poster outside the museum, and there is just a straight up like naked man, like photograph, penis and everything, just right there. Yeah. And when we were watching TV, there was nudity on TV. They show penises here a lot more than they do in America. And I think
I'm on my way.
You're too much. But it really is, it's different because like in Germany, for example, there's something called FKK, which is Freikörperkultur. It's like free body culture. And so, bathing, sunbathing, nude, going to the sauna is a very normal thing in Northern Europe. And usually when you go to a sauna or you go to like a hot spring or something like that, or a spa, like you're going to do it naked, fully nude. And it's weird because my ex-boss, my supervisor, he was like, hey, we love to go to this spa, you should go with us. And I'm like, we're going to be
I
like
can't get naked with my boss.
Exactly. I was like, what is this? But in Europe, I think the reason why it is that way is because in America, I think that we struggle with a lot of like neo-Puritan or like Puritan remnants in our culture where violence is okay, sexuality and nudity is not okay.
So
And
weird.
in Europe, it's the opposite. Here, they don't like violent content. And in America, a lot of our content is very violent. And so it's the opposite. Yeah. And a penis here is not taboo. They're like, it's a body part. Like, it's a penis. You know what I mean?
It's a wonderful body. It's my favorite body part.
Me too.
If I'm an American and I'm coming over to Europe, what's the one thing that I should avoid in conversation with Europeans?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're coming to Germany, do not get off the plane. And the very first question you ask is like, was your great grandfather a Nazi? Like, that is the one thing
for sure
that Americans love to talk to Germans about. They're like, oh, so what was your family doing? And it's like, okay, don't talk about that. Like that's a very personal thing. But I think in general, I wouldn't say it's like, don't talk about specific things with Europeans. It's more like, don't approach every conversation like, well, in America, we do it this way. Well, why don't you guys do it the way we do it? Do you know what I mean? I hear that all the time, and I'm like, please stop.
Yeah. What is your advice for solo travelers?
Mm-hmm. I think, again, it's very dependent on where you go.
Okay.
There are certain, and unfortunately, we live in the kind of world where, like, if you are a female traveler, it's a very different experience. If you're an LGBTQ plus traveler, it's going to be different, I would say in general, it's very safe. It's the same thing as traveling in the US. But obviously you need to be vigilant, and solo traveling here though is something I recommend people do. Austin and I have both done solo traveling since we moved here. We've never had problems with it. We have lots of female friends who do solo traveling. They have no problems. The only thing is, if it's your first time in Europe, maybe I would recommend doing it with someone. Or if you're by yourself, at least, connect with people online, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're speaking of connecting online, where can people find more about you and your story?
So to be honest, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. Austin and I have a Instagram account. You can see some of our travel pictures. It's just Zach and Austin is our handle. But also, this is just like kind of like under wraps, but I want to do more like writing and putting some of the things I've already written about out online. And so I don't know, maybe I'll have to give you a tidbit of information, but yeah, people can follow me on socials. Absolutely.
Lovely. And to people that are afraid to travel, what would you say to them?
Don't let the fear of whatever it is that you're scared of, like, don't let that hold you back, because it's so worth it. Because traveling, there's like the famous Mark Twain quote where he says, traveling is the enemy of prejudice and bigotry. And I believe that, because the more of the world you see and the more of humanity that you see, and that's at least, in my case, the more empathy and more patience you have for others. I think that I never had the sense of love that I feel like now for other people as I did since like traveling. Traveling has helped me with that. And so if you have a dream and if you want to go see the world, do it. I mean, why not? You only have one life. So
what's the biggest thing that you've learned from traveling?
At the end of the day, humans, that we're all the same. It's pretty amazing. I don't care if I'm in Sicily or if I'm in Malta. I don't care, if I'm in, I've been to Aruba and other parts of the US, and the thing is, we all want to love and we all want to be loved. At the end of the day, that's true. We all want to be cared for. We all want to be safe. We all want to be loved. And that's really like what humanity is. And I think we create more lies about our differences than seeing that we're all really the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Zach, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and talking about traveling. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. This was fun.
Well, everyone, please make sure to subscribe and follow. And always remember, anyone can be an icon, but it takes a person with heart to be a legend. Until next time, we'll see you later.